those guys are able to get in. As people get in, I'll approve those people to get in. So I'll manage the participants as they come in. But what I asked the people and what I asked you to do when you came on here was just to talk a little bit about AFFL and your vision for AFFL 2020. So in a nutshell, what do you see and why are you doing it?
All right. Well, what we're trying to do is play some football. Seems like that's what everybody wants to do. The players want to play, fans want to see people play, and we just got to find a way to do it in a place where we can meet all the requirements. You know, you got a lot of rules; they're different everywhere. You know, some things are in Florida might work, maybe some things in Texas might work. Maybe we got to try to. We're working very hard right now to find a place where we can make sure that everything lines up and that everyone can play safely and that we don't have to, you know, have people go into 3 weeks of quarantine and all other kinds of craziness to in order to play. But that's what we're trying to drive to is playing some football because we feel like that's what everybody wants.
And obviously you're not able to, and no one's really sure about the certainty of being able to play in large atmospheres or large environments with the hundreds of teams you would ideally love to see happen, play in an event like this. So you're promising some football and you're promising the best football out there.
Yeah, I mean, one of the great things about having played 2 seasons now is that, you know, we've seen most, sure not all, but we've seen most of the real high level players now around the country. So there's a lot of teams now that are extremely experienced in our rules and know our game and have been really improving dramatically over the last couple of years, both in terms of their skill and their strategy as well as their rosters. You see teams, you know, dropping guys, you know, 9, 10, 11, and 12 and picking up guys that would have been, you know, 1s and 2s and 3s on other teams. So you see teams really getting stronger. And so it was, you know, what we're thinking about right now is an event that would have 8 of our best teams, of our best amateur teams from the past couple of years. It has not been an easy thing to identify who those 8 teams would be. I've heard from some of the guys that were on the bubble, and I appreciate very much the spirit in which they pled their case. You know, we're trying to create something manageable that we can execute and that we can deliver for everybody. So, you know, next 2021 is going to be the time for everybody to get their chance on the field. One of the things that we really want to get away from in the future is the feeling that like we somehow chose who gets to be involved. We want winning and losing to determine who gets to play. So, you know, I'd love to see a world where there's, you know, 5,000 teams playing level after level after level to get to the 128, and everybody has to work their way up. You know, that's kind of a long-term vision, that the only way to advance is to win, is to put it out there on the field. But unfortunately, you know, 2020 is not presenting us with that kind of an opportunity.
Okay. And word on the street is that you're excited about introducing the women into this AFFL style of play. Is that true?
Yeah. You know, it's funny. One of the things I don't know, probably other people probably are not following our Instagram likes and stuff as much as I am. But I'll tell you that whenever we post about girls or women's flag in any of our social channels, the response we get is just unbelievable. Like, people are fired up. You know, let's face it, most of the people that are in our community are men. You know, I think we run like 80-85% men in terms of who are our friends and followers. But when we start talking about having women or girls out there on the field, people are excited. People want to see them. And I can't tell you how excited I am about the idea of seeing these women play on a 100-yard field. You know, unfortunately, I think, you know, the women's game is probably a little more international right now in terms of at the highest level than the men's game.
Yes.
And it's going to be, I think, extremely challenging. I know we've had a lot of interest from some of the international players in being in the women's event, but I'm not sure exactly whether or not we're going to be able to do that. But I'm certain that in the future we're going to see some amazing, amazing play from people from all over the world. in women's flag.
I know I've known you for a few years. I've known that women's flag football has been important to you. What were your thoughts on the NFL partnering with the NAIA and bringing women's flag football as a varsity sport?
Well, the NFL flag guys have been doing a great job. They've really revitalized that program. It was pretty sleepy, and they're doing a really terrific job of bringing it up. When you bring in Russell Wilson as an ambassador, you're making a statement. And we've been saying for quite some time, we think that girls football should be a high school varsity sport everywhere, period. The boys can play tackle, but there should be a girls football team anywhere they want one. I don't know if I ever told you the story, but I went to see the mayor's office here in New York City back in the old real world time. And they informed me that there are more high schools in New York City that have PSAL, that's a public school athletic league here in the city, that have football teams than boys. There are more girls PSAL football teams than boys. The girls teams are flag teams and the boys teams are tackle teams.
Wow.
But there are more girls flag football teams than boys tackle football teams in New York City. New York City, by the way, not necessarily being the epicenter of the football universe. So that really is telling you something about what's going on out there. And obviously we see the Buccaneers being very active in Florida. We see the Falcons being very active in Georgia. And we'd love to see every NFL team get as active as those guys have been in bringing up the girls. But the fact is, this should be a college sport. This should be an Olympic sport, men and women around the world. This is a perfect game to be played by men and women from all over the world because of its accessibility, because it's basically, it needs barely more stuff than you need to play soccer. And the reason that people play soccer all over the world is mostly because you don't need any stuff. So when you can play a game that's way more interesting, way more fun, way more action, and still not really need a whole bunch of stuff, that should be something that catches fire. So, I remember I was talking to a Chinese old colleague of mine, and I asked him how many people in China are, like 5'8", 150 and run a 4.40. He said, more people than there are in America. So he was probably exaggerating a little bit, but you get the picture.
Yes.
This is a game that that men and women around the world will be competitive very quickly once they take it up. And that's one of the really exciting things that we see in the future.
And how excited are you as being a pioneer in the game that you are? How excited are you about offering your set of rules to be, the type of rules that would help bring this type of thing to fruition? Not necessarily with the NAIA, but I mean internationally different.
Well, we've always from the beginning felt like, it's football game. You play a football game on a football field. Okay. I mean, it just kind of like, it makes sense, right? And the only reason that you would play on a smaller field is because either the athletes can't handle it. So you're talking about like little kids, and then you want to play across the field instead of down the field. Or you, for some reason, have like a resource problem. You don't have enough space. You don't have enough money. But if we're talking about, showcasing a sport at the highest level, then I would presume that, money and space are not issues. And we should play football on a football field. So, and obviously the reason we play with 7 is that puts the same number of people in the same amount of space that you see in a football game. And, if you think about it, if we're ever going to be in front of crowds, men, women, boys, whatever, we're going to be in stadiums that are either built for football or soccer or rugby or lacrosse. And guess what? It's going to look really silly if they're playing in some little corner of that space. Like, why can women and boys and girls play rugby and lacrosse on those big fields, but somehow when we play football, we need to shrink it? It doesn't make any sense to me. So, I think that puts our game in the best light. And I feel like after over 400 games of our style, that most of the choices that we made have been shown to be pretty good ones. To be clear, we keep making adjustments, and we will continue to do so. Yes. I hear and we listen. Okay, when several of our players, several of our coaches are extremely free with their opinions, and sometimes overly so. But the fact is, we take every suggestion, we take every criticism, and we really give them some thought. And there's some couple of changes that we made. In this event, we'll be playing 14-person rosters instead of 12, so that we can have people be a little bit less fatigued in these games. And also, I think we'll see a change in the overtime rules, which were a little controversial. I got to tell you, I still like the rule the way we wrote it, but we're gonna give it a shot where it looks a little different, where it looks a little bit more like the regular game.
Well, I can definitely tell you from our first conversation, I want to say it was Memorial Day of 2017, I believe, was our first conversation. You've definitely been open-minded to it, and I know that's hard to do, especially when you have a product as good as yours. But Jeff, you mentioned Florida, you mentioned Texas. I caught a couple of those names that come out. Are those potential sites, or is it the weather that may play a difference on if you decide to do something this year, where it'll be?
Well, we obviously have the greatest concentration of teams coming from Florida and Texas. So they're obviously the most natural places for us to start, because they'll have the fewest people traveling, and
right.
So
makes sense.
So that's what makes the most sense. And generally, I guess if you look at the way that states are opening up, Florida and Texas both in certain ways are opening up, but neither at this moment is open enough.
Gotcha.
In Florida, the quarantine stuff causes you some trouble, and in Texas, the close sort of proximity at this point is not okay. So we have to continue to monitor and see what the states are thinking about. And if Georgia comes along or another state comes along and basically provides the right recipe in terms of the conditions, then we'd have to consider going there. But for now, I think our preference would be to go where our players already are, if we can.
Okay. We've seen the lack of sports, and we've seen Vegas and the sports books go to having betting lines on Korean baseball.
Throwing. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on them actually, AFFL getting into the sports books?
Well, everybody remembers, of course, that there was a line put up on our 2018 championship game where the Godspeed professional team was an 8.5-point favorite. I've only heard rumors that there were people who managed to get some action on Fighting Cancer as an 8.5-point underdog. I don't know if Fighting Cancer will ever be an 8.5-point underdog.
I doubt it. I doubt it.
But obviously, we would love for people to be able to do all kinds of stuff around flag. We'd like to see them be able to gamble, do fantasy, do contests. We've actually been talking to some of the contest guys who do some of the free contests, where you can win prizes, and it just makes it more fun to watch the game, right? So, the question comes up, is who's going to score the next touchdown? Is it going to be Avron's team or RT's team? And, you get to just, have some
Avron's
fun.
Team. My team wins. My team.
but that stuff is, it's fun. And it's part of, all of that is part of the experience of watching sports now. So, we're working away at incorporating those things. But, obviously the sports books have been a little soured. They got pretty invested in the Alliance. They got pretty invested in the XFL.
Yes.
And then they had some real issues because they couldn't finish. So, we'll get there. Eventually we'll get there. No doubt about it.
And speaking of finishing, you ran 2 successful seasons so far, and you've made a mark. You left a mark in this game that will last forever. I've been playing for a long time, and never in my wildest dreams did I think that we'd be playing at this level and these venues for this amount of money and everything else. Why do you keep doing it? Why don't you just pick up and ride off into the sunset and do something different?
Oh, dude, we got a lot of unfinished business. First of all, we haven't had the women on the field yet, but this is about the game. The game, I really believe this is the best game in the world. The combination of its availability to people of every shape and size, every age, rich and poor, big and tall, the fact that everybody can go play this game, the fact that team sports are needed more today than they have ever been in our culture to bring people together and to teach them life lessons. And we all look back at those moments in our lives when we were playing team sports as some of the most vivid and impactful moments. And this game is just a fantastic game. It is this wild and woolly and fast and fun version of football that the world is going to fall in love with. And so until that happens, until we are a major sport in America and around the world for men and women, our work will not be done.
Okay, just a couple quick questions, because I think this is interesting to people based on who you've talked to, not Jeff Lewis's favorite, but just from the players and the fans and the employees that you've talked to. Who was the pro that either surprised people the most or people like seeing the most?
It's a really interesting question. That's a really interesting question. You know, I'll tell you that probably the pro that has made me laugh the most of all the pros that have participated with us has been Steve Smith, the old New York Giant receiver. Steve played in the first game, in the launch game, played both ways. And I don't know if you remember, but early in the game, he dropped an easy pick. You know, and this is a guy who caught 100 balls in a season in the National Football League. And the look on his face, you know, when he dropped the pick, because all he wanted was to tell everybody about this interception, right? You know, we actually had a call the other day where Griff and Mark Clayton, who played for the Ravens, were on a call together. And they started having so much fun about how they were going to get to a game of flag and guard each other, you know? So I always love seeing when the pros, you know, play the other way and you know, kind of have that opportunity to do things. You know, when you watch Michael Griffin throwing the ball, you watch Kerry Rhodes playing receiver, you watch, you know, Vic being the receiver on a little option route from Werfel. When you see the pros sort of out of their element, out of their comfort zone, that to me it's just a lot of fun.
And the gap closed quickly, because when you and I first met, I guaranteed you that the Joes would beat the pros. Like, I was just adamant that the Joes would do it. How do you think the pros closed that gap so quickly? Because I think
well, I think as I think was said in that NFL Films documentary, you know, I think somebody from Fighting Cancer might have been who said, you know, we're the pros, right? And I think everybody realized early on that flag has a nuance to it that's different. It's not wildly different. I mean, Bill Belichick puts flags on the Patriots defense so that they'll square up and attack people's hips. Okay. So if the pro players really thought about it, they'd be a heck of a lot better at pulling flags than they are. Right. Because they basically really do know how to do it, but they get a little, you know, betwixt and between. But at the end of the day, the world we see is a world where there are flag pros, some of whom were NFL players and some of whom were D1 players and some of whom, you know, are UPS drivers. And that's the world of flag pros. And they will all be out on the field playing flag because they're the best flag players in the world. And just because you played in the NFL or you played at a big D1 school doesn't guarantee that you'll be that person. But obviously, you're talking about people that are at those levels that are amazing athletes. They know how to play football, and many of them should be able to adapt and play our game. But at the end of the day, if we have 32 flag teams, you know, 15 years from now all over the country, there'll probably be some that have 12 guys that played in the NFL and some that have none. Mm-hmm. That's kind of where you could end up.
Yeah, I could definitely see that happen. And last question, I know you're a busy man. At the end of the day, when this is all said and done, what do you hope people see, or what is your legacy? What is AFFL's legacy? What do you want people to see that you've done of what this game has meant to you and why you're investing so much time and money and efforts and resources into this?
Well, I think what the AFFL has been about from the beginning is the journey that every person takes playing this game. And that's why the amateurs will always be a part of it, the amateur teams, the amateur tournament. That's why we're connecting to kids and girls. And, you know, this is about everyone's journey as a teammate, as an athlete, and striving to get to that next level. And this is the perfect platform. This game is the perfect platform for people, if they want to do the work, to have the game take them where they're willing to go. So, that's all really anybody really ever asked for in life is an opportunity. And I think that's what we are. We're a platform where people who love this game can get the opportunity to take it as far as they can.
That's awesome. I absolutely love playing flag football. I love being a part of the AFFL tournaments. I love being involved in as much as I possibly can. And I never thought in a million years I'd see something like this at this level. So you guys caught me crying one time. I'm not going to do it again. But I really do appreciate everything that you've done for this game, and to see that what you're doing for the women and allowing the women to be involved in it. I think that's going to be great. The next thing you're going to hear is, what about co-ed AFFL? If you haven't heard that already.
We got to put one foot in front of the other. There's a lot to this, but I'd love to see it. I would love to see it. Yeah. Absolutely. Eventually, yes, 100%.
Okay. Well, I know what your vision is, and I have a good idea of it. And I thank you for coming on and doing this. I've recorded this. I'll get this out to people to hear it. Keep doing what you're doing. I know it's a selfless job, a thankless job for what you guys do. And I appreciate it. I appreciate it greatly.
No, this is not thankless. The amount of feeling that comes from the flag world back to us is more than thanks enough. We get plenty of gratitude. So
awesome.
I appreciate your looking out for me.
All the time, man. I appreciate it. And I look forward to a great 2020 and an even better 2021. Stay safe,
everybody,
man.
Be safe out there, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff. So Berg, I know that we've got, I guess I accidentally put an approval on here, and I took it off so people don't have to prove to get on in the thing. If Jeff is still on, yeah, he's still on. Jeff, do you mind either of these gentlemen on here ask you a question, if any of them have any questions?
No problem.
Matt, Berg. Matt, I know you have a question. You're muted, Berg. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, now we can.
I was going to say, with your question for Jeff, because I watched it quite a bit, and I consider myself a little bit of a historian and being around this game forever. I tell you, the guy that impressed me more is fluid and flag, quick on, was Seneca Wallace.
Oh, yeah.
Watching him in the pocket, I thought, from what we've seen of Ron, with flag football players and quarterbacks, his mannerisms showed me that if he really put his effort to it, he could be a very effective quarterback in this. I thought his mannerisms, his fluidity was just very much fit the flag persona.
Yes.
No question. And my understanding, I don't know that I have this directly from Seneca, but my understanding is that he was a little injured at that time.
I mean, his reading of the field and his 1-2-3s.
But he was a very mobile player, and he didn't really have all his mobility. And you can imagine that would have been, pretty intimidating if he was able to move around a little better than he was. But you're absolutely right. Seneca was spectacular. I'm very hopeful we'll see Seneca again at some point.
Yeah, just adding my 2 cents of all the quarterbacks, and we've all played against ex-pros and that, but I'm here in Austin, so I get to play every once in a while against Griff and that. And Griff is a guy that's picked it up very well too, and is playing very great. But I was just watching it on TV. I was amazed on how quick he picked it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Who was the other quarterback? Jared? Was it Jared Johnson, or who was the other?
JJ is tremendous. JJ threw for over 80 touchdowns at A&M. He kept Ryan Tannehill on the bench. I'm sure he'd like to have Ryan Tannehill's contract right about now. But I remember JJ was playing in the first game. He was sharing a team with Jimmy Clausen. And Adam and I were watching JJ warm up, and I just looked at Adam. I'm like, I don't know anything, but this guy's not good enough. This guy's 6'7", and he's just ripping it, But it's tough business, man. You never know. You never know how Ryan Fitzpatrick's going to start 80 games, and some other guys. Ryan Leaf is going to do nothing. You just never really know.
Yeah, I think what you've also seen in this game is even on the amateur side, you've seen some of the personas and some of the personalities that were already big before, but you've given them a platform that they would have never not normally had. One of my favorites,
Well,
one of the guys I know I love to death, Fred. He's like my little brother, but Fred McDonald has just blossomed. His playing already took him to the next level, but him being in the AFFL and the light that you gave him was just like it's on a whole nother level now.
Well, you know, I bet you the fighting cancer guys have a better chance of getting recognized walking down the street in New Orleans than the guys on the Saints do.
Yeah.
Because when they were doing their thing, everyone could see them.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, when you watch an athlete or a performer of any kind, you feel like you get to know them. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we all were watching. It was funny when we all watched a few weeks ago on CBS the original game.
Yeah.
One of the things that I had sort of forgotten about that was just how much fun those guys were having and how much fun that made it to watch it. Like, it didn't even matter. It was a 20-point game or whatever at the end, right? But it was just, they were having such a riot. And like, you know, normally it's so, in a way, it's sort of cold and you're kind of like cut off from the experience of the guys. And what was so clear about that is, like, in a lot of ways, they didn't have any idea what to expect, right? They were coming to play in this thing. They were kind of like, I don't know, it's almost like a corporate outing or something, right? They were like, they didn't really know, right? I tried to sort of prep them, but at the end of the day, we'd never played a game. They were the ones creating the blueprint.
Right.
And so, you know, that just to see the personality and the fun and the competitiveness, you know, like when there was that moment where Seabald pulls Clausen's flag and Clausen falls down, right? And Clausen jumps up and he's like pointing at the video monitor, like, he tripped me. Max is like, never touched him, you know. But like the competitiveness, like, you know, all of a sudden these guys were, it was on, right?
Yeah.
And you know, with you know, there's obviously an unbelievable number of characters in this community, and the best part of this is there's 100 characters we haven't met yet. You know, there's
absolutely.
one of the things that's very clear to us is that there are a lot of athletes who have not found their way into the flag world. You know, if you don't live in a city that has an active league, or if you don't live in a place where there's like a really good team to join, there are lots of athletes who really want in.
Yeah.
And don't have a way in. And I think with our visibility, well, there's a lot of characters that are coming down the pike.
I mean, you almost had the league, or Michael Vick almost played his last football game. He was so upset and so mad that he lost. And that's when people think that this is just a game, like, oh, it's just a game to an extent, but it brings out that competitive juice in you. And he was mad. Like, I think he said on TV, like, I'm done with football. Like, I'm out. I'm done. But he was that mad that he lost that game, knowing that he probably shouldn't have. And I mean, glad he came back, but that's how it means a lot. It means a lot.
Everon, am I still hot?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, hell, I've been playing longer than you. I've known you for over 20 years. And it's amazing to me on how many people that I meet, either, you know, through my own friendships or on the field, that don't play flag but have seen it. And they're just amazed that it's not just schoolyard background, you know, in the dirt football. I'm like, if you don't have a strategy, you're not going to win.
Right.
And, you know, the one thing I liked about this, it's shown people on the outside that, you know, this isn't just guys throwing the ball around and getting lucky. I mean, in that huddle and all your plays, these guys work and work and work to, you know, to just improve their plays and the accuracy and the strategy. So when your guy breaks this way, you know where he's going and you can throw the ball before he breaks, which is the same stuff that, you know, takes in synergy and, you know,
last season and you look at what Pat and the Freaks did, you know, they read the rules better than anybody else. And they went a long way because they had a strategy. They had a plan for everything.
Yep.
And, you know, I think you'll see a lot of people learn from that. and, you know, really get more into the nuances. And, you know, the other thing that's kind of funny that's going on now for sure is I see a lot of plays happening in NFL games that look like flag.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you got like the coach of the Dolphins, coach of the Bears. You got a bunch of coaches now, the Saints, man, they'll let anybody throw it to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They are not afraid. There was a game, I think, where Tariq Cohen threw a pass on the last play of the game, try to win the game for the Bears that I was watching a couple years ago. Yeah. You know, you see the Saints with 3 quarterbacks on the field at the same time. Uh-huh. You know, this is flag.
Yeah.
And one of the things about flag is people like imagination, and they like to be creative. And as a fan, you know, we always want to watch people be creative. And I think for a long time in the league, there's been a tendency for coaches to not want to lose on a quote unquote gadget play, right? A gadget play is almost by definition like offensive, right? In the old days.
Yeah.
But I think you're seeing people recognize that if you could run something that they're not expecting, you know, remember, I think it was Odell threw a pass to Saquon, right? You know, if you can run something that they're not expected, it's going to work.
Yeah.
So, and as we know, on all these teams, there are athletes at every position. And so if you kind of restrict what you ask them to do, in a lot of ways, you leave something on the table. And that's what I think flag always has. And I think it's definitely seeping into the league.
I saw more pitches in an NFL game in 2019 that I'd seen in years combined. And I was like, that had to be flag. It had to be flag. Matt, I saw you had a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Of course, the women's division is, you know, awesome that you're bringing that platform out for that. Jeff, what would be your number one goal when all said and done this year, next year, once you complete that first championship? What is the number one goal from that?
Well, you know what? I think that our women players can be as impactful to young girls as like the U.S. women's soccer team is. I mean, I really believe that this is a game, you know, as we've traveled, it's pretty funny. As we travel the country playing all of our events, probably the thing that I would see most often at these athletic fields, at these big complexes where we'd be playing our regionals, probably the most common thing I would see is girls soccer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that was kind of always around. And they'll watch the best and to sort of emulate them. So I would love for girls to see these women and think, you know, I can do that and get out there and play. That's, you know, I wouldn't be surprised, don't offend any of the guys out here, I wouldn't be surprised to see women's flag be as big of a sport in 20 years as men's. Audience, attendance, the whole thing. Wouldn't be surprised.
I could see that happening. I could absolutely see that happening, and I'd like to be a part of that movement. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Jeff,
all right, guys.
Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Thank y'all for joining. I appreciate it. I'll get this edited and I'll get it out, man. Thank you so much, Jeff.
All right. See you.
Y'all have a good night.